Telemachus awoke with the baffling realization that he was still alive, which produced in him a slight, genuine smile. It had been years since he had smiled in this manner, not for company, not for form, but for himself alone. Yet his joy was weakened by the memory of last night's events. He had managed to engage both himself and his mother in a degree of danger that might not have been as smart as when he first thought of it. His mother had so far been rather safe. The suitors seemed to believe that the swiftest route to his father's wealth was through the marriage bed of the widow. So far, that calculation had spared her. He could only pray that his antics had not caused them to reach for their swords instead of their flower bouquets. As for himself, well, here reality pressed in with all the charm of a wild boar in a narrow lane. Against the assembled ranks of these overfed, overconfident opportunists, he stood no chance at all. If they had not already begun sharpening their swords for him, then the idea was surely simmering somewhere in their collective stew of malice.
What he needed, and needed with all the rapidity of Hermes himself, was allies. His best hope lay with the elders of Ithaca, men of a certain vintage, grey of hair and rich in stories, some of whom had fought shoulder to shoulder with his father in the gore and glory of Troy, and had managed to limp back to Ithaca. If he were to survive long enough to grow his own respectable crop of grey hair, their assurances would be more than a comfort. They would be the very breath in his lungs. The mission, as far as Telemachus was concerned, was as clear as the wine in his bronze cup and twice as intoxicating. Expose the suitors for the greedy, power-hungry wolves they so plainly were. These were no benevolent suitors competing for the hand of Penelope, or even the honor of serving Ithaca. They were parasites, who were in it for the money and power, sleek and satisfied, fattening themselves upon the spoils of a household they believed not to have a leader. And once their villainy was dragged into the full glare of daylight, the elders, men of dignity, would have no choice but to rally to the crown. Thus, as the first rays of dawn stretched across the sky, Telemachus made his way into town flanked by two loyal guards, chosen less for their capacity with a sword than for comfort of not facing the day alone. Telemachus' dog Argos followed them along. The dog was merely a puppy when Odysseus left. Now he was half blind and could barely walk. Every morning, Telemachus would come and visit him for 5 minutes. And this morning, Argos insisted to come with him, as if he knew something was up. Telemachus had summoned the heralds the previous evening, so the townsfolk and their elders were already awaiting him. His loyal friend, Medon, son of one of the palace servants, had squeezed himself into a guard's armor. It dangled off him like a child swimming in his father's overcoat. Anyone with eyes could see he wasn't fooling anyone. But Medon wore it with the fierce pride of a knight in shining tin. Whenever the other boys mocked Telemachus, "Did Daddy leave you?" they jeered, cruel little hyenas. Medon was always first to leap in with fists flying. He turned up now, chin up, eyes blazing with loyalty. "If they come at you in the agora, you run. Me and Philoetius will hold them off. Right, Phil?" Philoetius, the gentle mountain of a man, gave him a reluctant nod. He stood over 2 meters tall, broad as a barn door, and looked very much as if he had been raised on loads and loads of Greek bread, olive oil, and second helpings of meat from the cows he was herding. His size alone was enough to make most troublemakers think twice. He was already helping his father herd cows when Odysseus left, and even though few people knew more about cow herding than him, in mind, he was still like a child. He was not really a fighter either. In truth, he'd never thrown a punch in his life. He didn't need to. People and cows simply assumed he was dangerous due to his size, which suited him just fine. Telemachus, however, barely seemed to hear them at all. His mind was far away, replaying what might await him in the public square. His thoughts raced through every possibility, each scenario darker than the last. Medon gave Philoetius a playful shove on the arm, which, to be fair, was like shoving a marble pillar. "See? Phil's with me. No one's getting past us." Philoetius blinked, still looking as nervous as a sheep at a wolf's wedding. "I don't know, Medon," he muttered. I've never actually fought anyone." Medon rolled his eyes. "You don't need to fight, Phil. You just stand there and look terrifying. Honestly, with shoulders like those, half the Agora would faint before you even raise a fist." Philoetius scratched his head, a little embarrassed. "Faint? Oh no. Once one of my cows fainted, and I got so scared, I thought it had died." Medon groaned. "Gods above, you're hopeless." Telemachus gave the faintest smile at their chatter, though his gaze soon drifted back to the road ahead. The market square loomed in his imagination. Sneering suitors, whispers behind hands, the sting of insults too familiar to be ignored. He tried to picture what he would do, what he should do. Each plan unraveled the moment he thought of it. "Don't worry, Telemachus," Medon said suddenly, trying to sound braver than he felt. "If they come at you, they'll have to go through us first. And, well, if nothing else, Phil can just sit on them. That ought to end things quickly." For once, Philoetius managed a smile. "That I can do." They all laughed, but the laughter faded quickly, and silence settled over them like a heavy cloak. Because they all knew the real danger wasn't boys in the marketplace. It was men, grown men, with daggers and tempers, waiting in the square. But they were expecting that. What they did not expect, however, was the sight that greeted them upon arrival at the public square. The huge smile of Eurymachus, a smile that stated he had already won, planted squarely at the center like an alpha wolf who owned the yard. He seemed as if he had just given a speech to the crowd. When he saw Telemachus, he smiled at him, a sly, feline little curve of the lips, as if saying, "I know exactly what you're up to, my boy." Eurymachus was the long game sort. He did not lower himself to the ridiculous antics the other suitors engaged in to woo the queen. Oh no, he was wooing the wooers, gaming the very players in this revolting little drama. His prize was not necessarily Penelope, but power itself, a ministerial seat from which he could whisper into the king's ear, and by subtle degrees, pull the strings of the realm. Whether he got the queen's hand or not, he figured he would win, which, Telemachus realized with a chill, made him far more dangerous than any of the sword-jangling suitors. Telemachus returned the smile with one of his own, the kind that said, "Two can play at this." But the doubts came flowing to his mind without invitation. How long had Eurymachus been here? Had he already bent the elders to his will? Was Telemachus, before the meeting had even begun, already too late? Then the slow, deliberate creak of an old man rising broke his thoughts. The chieftain Aegyptus, bent like a bow under the weight of his years, came to his feet. His eyes were shadowed with the memory of his son Antiphus, who had sailed to Troy with Odysseus and never returned. Another son, Eurynomus, was at that very moment among the suitors themselves, a living reminder that a man's bloodline could scatter to both honor and shame. "Who," Aegyptus began, his voice worn yet still commanding, "has summoned us here, and for what cause? Never have we met in council since the day Odysseus set sail from Ithaca. Has word come of those who followed him to Troy? Or is there some other matter of public weight that compels us? Yet whoever has sent out this summons, I doubt not he is a worthy man. May Zeus grant him success, whatever his purpose be." When Telemachus heard the old man's words, it felt to him like a blessing from above. He stood up, took the ceremonial staff from the herald, and got straight to the point. "Right here, old friend," he said, looking directly at Aegyptus.
It was me who called you here today, and trust me, I wouldn't drag everyone out for nothing. Losing my father, a man you all knew as a kind and fair king, is bad enough. But now I have to sit by and watch my best cattle slaughtered, my best wine guzzled, all by men pretending they're here to court my mother. You should be ashamed. Stop yourselves. Think about your reputations. Think about the judgment of the gods. Unless you're holding some grudge against my father for something he did to you. He got that far before his voice cracked. Tears welled up. He threw the staff to the ground.
Antinous, the most arrogant of the bunch, didn't waste a second. He moved to the center of the marketplace. This made the dog Argos bark at him violently. Antinous stepped back at the sight of him as he reached for his sword.
Get your stupid mutt to shut up!
This just made the dog more angry and much louder. Antinous fired back with his usual mix of rudeness and swagger, blaming everything on Penelope. According to him, she'd been stringing them along for 3 years, making promises she never intended to keep. He complained about her weaving, how she'd spend all day making a burial shroud, then secretly undoing it at night to stall for time. He ended with a sneer. As long as your mother keeps this up, we're staying right here. And as is custom, you would naturally bear the burden of being a good host. If you want us gone, send her back to her father's house and let her marry whoever she wants. Telemachus shot back. How dare you insult my mother, your queen? If you've got any sense of fairness, leave my house and live off your own property. But if you insist on eating me out of house and home, then I'll call on the gods to punish you. And I hope they do it sooner rather than later.
Behold, his prayer's been answered, cried Halitherses, known as Ithaca's oldest and wisest prophet. With a beard as white as sea foam and a strange talent for reading omens, all eyes turned to the sky. 2 great eagles were flying in the direction of the assembly, wings slicing the air like knives. Above the crowd they circled and circled. Then suddenly and viciously they turned on each other, claws and beaks flashing in a feathery brawl. After a flurry of furious blows, they broke apart and soared away, vanishing into the distance. Halitherses, never one to waste an omen, raised his voice again. Men of Ithaca, listen well. And you suitors of Penelope, listen especially. This is the omen. Trouble is coming for you, like a wave before it crashes. Odysseus will not be gone much longer. He's on his way back, plotting ruin for those who've wronged him. I warned you all the day he sailed for Troy. After much suffering, with all his men lost, he'd return in the 20th year. That time is upon us now.
Eurymachus got to his feet, smirking in his usual manner.
Halitherses, he said, his whispering voice dripping with contempt. Go home and save your prophecies for your own family, before your loose tongue lands you in trouble. Do you think every bird in the sky is carrying a divine message? Odysseus is dead. And frankly, isn't it about time you follow him, old man? The crowd erupted in laughter. Are you not embarrassed, backing up this cheeky little boy and feeding his ridiculous dreams, hoping he'll reward you, are you? Well, you'll find that friendship costly. Telemachus has heard our answer. He can save his speeches for his mother and convince her to behave. Your omens won't change a thing. Then he turned to the crowd, pitching his voice to reach the farthest ears. Tell me, what's happened to our island? Are we now ruled by children and old men chasing superstitions? If so, we're ripe for ruin. One enemy fleet, one bad season, and Ithaca's finished. We need real leadership, now.
A low ripple of mutters and nods moved through the crowd like wind in dry grass. Telemachus felt his throat tighten. If the people decided they wanted a new ruler, he and his mother wouldn't just lose the palace, they'd lose their lives. Had he pushed too far, too soon? As Telemachus stood there, weighing his next move, a single voice managed to cut cleanly through the muttering and shuffling of the crowd. It belonged to Mentor, a lifelong friend of Odysseus, left in charge of the household when the king sailed off to Troy. His voice carried both outrage and disappointment. "Is there truly no one here," he demanded, "who will speak up for Telemachus? No one willing to call out the shameless behavior of these men? If this is how you treat the son of your king, then let's have no more gentle rulers, no more patient leaders. Why bother? You had Odysseus, a man who loved his people like his own children, and this is how you repay his family. You sit here weak as sheep, while a gang of leeches roll all over you." That struck a chord. The mood shifted. A few heads turned toward Telemachus with a new softness in their eyes. Even some of the harder-faced elders seemed moved, and notably, not a single one of the suitors dared to answer. Then the old chieftain Egyptus rose, leaning on his staff. His voice was calm but firm. "We stand with the king's family. That is the end of it. Checkmate." The suitors had overplayed their hand. Now their intentions were plain to everyone. It was not a noble competition for Penelope's hand. They had no lofty ideals of protecting Ithaca. It was all about greed, naked and plain, and rather awkward in the morning sunlight. Telemachus caught the glare some fathers were shooting at their own sons among the suitors, and how those sons suddenly found the ground very interesting indeed. The main aim of this whole gathering had been achieved. The suitors' villainy was now public record. They had no excuses left, and when the day of reckoning came, as it surely would, there'd be no mercy. Telemachus quickly moved on before anyone dared to open up the discussion again. He spoke briefly of his next plan, a voyage to Pylos and then to Sparta to gather news of Odysseus. He asked for a ship and crew to take him to the mainland. No one leapt forward with offers. Ithacans weren't by nature early volunteers, but he still felt the meeting had bought him a little breathing space. At last the crowd dispersed. The suitors sloped back to Odysseus's house, eager to return to their wine and roast meat. Telemachus, however, was already drifting in thought toward the open sea, the salt wind, and the faint, stubborn hope of finding his long-lost father. Telemachus's head was buzzing like a beehive that's just been poked with a stick. He wandered down to the shore to clear his head. His two friends and his dog followed along. He turned towards Medon. "How on earth am I going to pull this voyage off?" Medon laughed. "You are not, buddy. Come on, get real. But hey, let them believe you can bring an army from Sparta. Who cares? Gives you some time." The waves lapped at the sand with maddening calm, as if they had no interest whatsoever in the affairs of a worried young prince. "Listen, I gotta run. Got a hot date with Alexandra. See you later," he said as he ran off. Philoetius and Argos followed him. Telemachus just crouched, scooped the cool salt water into his hands and let it wash over them. Then, straightening up, he raised both hands to the sky. "Oh you," he said, eyes narrowing as if Athene herself might be peeking from behind a cloud. "The very one who turned up yesterday at my place, telling me to set out on this little adventure. Yes, you. Would you mind lending a hand now that I'm in the thick of it?" He'd barely let the last syllable of his prayer drift off into the sea breeze when he heard someone. Turning, he saw Mentor strolling towards him from town, the same loyal friend who had spoken up for him at the meeting. "Now then, none of this long face," Mentor said, in that brisk, no-nonsense tone of his. "Remember whose boy you are. This voyage of yours, leave it to me. I'll sniff out a ship, and I'll sail with you to Pylos myself. You, in the meantime, go home and sort out the supplies. Corn, wine, barley meal, some wine in jars and leather bags, some warm clothes.
Ithaca's positively dripping with ships, old and new. I'll pick the best of the lot and man her with good men who will serve you freely, cheerfully for some good wine. Go along." Telemachus felt the knot in his chest loosen a little. Still, his stomach gave the odd beating when he thought about the vast, unknown adventure ahead. And why did Mentor remind him so much of Mentes? It was uncanny. It was as if the entire universe was telling him to go.
When he stepped back into the courtyard at home, the scene was as cheerless as ever. The suitors, up to their elbows in goats and pigs, preparing for yet another of their endless feasts. Antinous spotted him, and, with a grin that was all teeth and no warmth, came bounding up like an old friend, if old friends were the sort who'd rob you blind. "Well, well, Sir Eloquence himself," Antinous jeered, putting his arm around Telemachus's shoulders in mock camaraderie. "You look as if you're carrying the fate of kingdoms on your shoulders. But come now, put aside the lofty schemes for a moment. Eat, drink, be merry. You'll have your ship and your crew to get you to holy Pylos. No need to work yourself into a heroic sulk over it." Telemachus yanked himself away with all the politeness of a man removing a slug from his soup. "My mind," he said, his tone ironed crisp, "is not on your banquets and your full belly. I am not the boy you once patted on the head and plundered without consequence. I warn you, before many days are gone, you may discover that my patience is less elastic than you thought. Now, as I have said, I depart on my journey, though, thanks to you lot, I must go as a passenger rather than as the master of my own ship." His words, sharp enough to draw blood if words could cut, earned him a barrage of sneers. "We're all doomed," one suitor shrieked in mock terror. "Telemachus is off to rouse an army in Sparta. He'll return with warriors galore and bitch slap us all to bits." The crowd began laughing. "Or maybe," chimed another, holding back laughter, "maybe he'll bring back poison from Ephyra, pour it into the wine, and, oh dear me, we'll all be laid out as corpses." A third, with the wit of a damp sponge, added, "Careful, Telemachus, or you'll give us extra work, splitting up your belongings after you're gone." Scattered laughter reverberated throughout the great hall. But did he sense a bit of nervousness in the laughter? Yet, the taunts of idiots rarely find a home in an honest man's heart. Without so much as a farewell sniff, Telemachus turned his back on the jeering pack and headed for the strong room, the fortress of his father's wealth. There it was, heaps of gold and silver like the treasure hoard of a dragon, chests fat with fine garments, and jars swelling with fragrant olive oil. Along the far wall, a long line of drums, each with the best wine, which for 2 decades had been waiting for Odysseus's return. Guarding this trove was Euryclea, nurse, keeper of secrets, and no-nonsense chief of the house staff. Day and night she watched over the chamber like a lioness over her cubs. "Euryclea," Telemachus began, "fill me 12 jars of wine, not father's best, heaven forbid we disturb that, but the next finest. Take 20 measures of barley meal, stow them in leather sacks, and keep the whole lot ready until I send word. Say nothing, especially to my mother. I'm going to Sparta, and to sandy Pylos to seek news of father. We leave tonight, after she's asleep." "Who on earth has been stuffing your head with that idea?" cried Euryclea, her voice breaking into the high register reserved for calamities involving fire, famine, or children doing something dreadfully foolish. She flung her hands heavenwards in despair. "Why would you even dream of such a dreadful journey?" "You, our only child, our heart's delight, so precious, so loved." She moved closer, as if proximity might change his mind. "Odysseus is gone, lost to us forever, whether to the waves, the wars, or the tricks of some other land. And now you talk of leaving too." Do you not see what will happen? Those suitors, may their wine turn sour, will plot your ruin the instant your back is turned. You'll be far away, beyond help, and we shall lose you as well.
Fear nothing, for his voice calm but carrying the curious confidence of youth who believe that destiny is rather fond of them. Heaven's eye is upon me, and the hand of Zeus is spread over me. He leaned in, almost conspiratorial. But swear to me now, you will not breathe a word of this to my mother until 12 days have passed. But, she tried. Promise. She nodded. I promise, she said to him. She immediately called other servants and put them to work. Soon the house was alive with quiet, purposeful industry. Grain measured, jars sealed, provisions tucked away. Meanwhile, the suitors were in hilariously high spirits, still enjoying the warmth of what they thought was their very clever triumph at the meeting. They had eaten as though famine had been forecast in the morning, and drank as if the wine itself were about to run out forever. Thus it was that, heavy of belly and slow of wit, they waddled off to their beds earlier than usual, snoring their way into oblivion. When Telemachus stepped back into the banquet hall, he found it quiet but for the clink of plates being cleared and the soft scuff of servants sweeping away the remnants of greed. And then, in he came, Mentor with that brisk, unflappable air and a huge grin on his face that says, I've handled everything, no need to fret. The ship's at her moorings, he declared, as if reporting the most natural thing in the world. Telemachus swallowed hard. The thought struck him with a jolt. Good heavens, I'm actually going through with this. His father's dog, Argos, got excited from all the activity and jumped up and down at Telemachus. You can't come, buddy, Telemachus whispered to him as he hugged him goodbye. But I will be back soon. Take care of Philoetius and the cows for me, will you? Down to the harbor went all the provisions, baskets, jars, sacks, hurried along by eager hands until each was tucked neatly beneath the rowers' benches, a sailor's version of tucking children into bed. All hands aboard, cried Mentor, striding to his rightful place at the stern, Telemachus close beside him, like a young prince about to learn the sea's ancient ways. The boy's eyes wandered to the horizon, a restless sweep of blue and white. The waves came at them with a kind of gleeful malice, slapping the ship as though intent on shattering it. A sudden, unkind wave jolted the deck, sending Telemachus off balance. Was this Poseidon's subtle way of hinting they might never reach Pylos? Are we actually going? I mean, are we ready? He asked, half in hope, half in dread. Mentor merely laughed, a sound like seasoned oak meeting the wind, and called, All crew in position. The oarsmen took their seats, ropes slithered free into the water, and with a steady rhythm of strokes, wood on sea, muscle on wave, the ship glided from the cradle of the harbor into the open arms of the great, unpredictable sea. A strong, clean breeze came hovering in from the west. The great sails spread with a satisfying snap, and the ship leapt forward like a delighted hound set loose. White spray frothed and roared in her wake. The oars were shipped, and the lines made fast. Then came the clinking of cups and the hearty pledging of a prosperous voyage.